All right, so it's 7 o'clock on Monday, July 9th, 2018, and I'll call the meeting to order, and the first thing we'll do is have a moment of silent reflection. Is there any declaration of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof?
Just wanted to check the Rebotham drain, that's only for road work?
Yes.
Okay, so none. So we'll move into the minutes of our previous meeting, which was June 8th, 2018. We have a mover and seconder for those. Councillor McKinnon and Councillor Hendricks. Any errors or omissions? All those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. So we have a number of timed events and delegations for this evening. At 7:05, we have Strathroy Middlesex General Hospital Foundation here to give a presentation for our presentation of funds and an update. And then at 7:20, we have the Middlesex London Health Unit coming for just an update of the services review. And then at 7:40, we have Lindsay Linker is coming to request of the speed reduction on Pike Road between the CN tracks and Healy Drive. And then lastly at 8 o'clock we have Mariah Minton, which is a request for sponsorship for the Team Canada Dance. What I'm going to do is jump right into our first delegation, which is the Strathroy Middlesex General Hospital Foundation. Come forward and to give a presentation for us. Is that yours or is that somebody else's?
Yep, go ahead.
I think I'll need your pass first.
Okay.
Which I don't have. Do you have the USB? Oh, sorry. I thought you had it. I apologize. You do, not me. Thank you.
There's only one. That's right. Those were the numbers.
There's probably 16666 for whatever reasons.
Yeah.
Down, removable.
You drag yourself?
I can hit enter. Yeah.
And perfect. Now we're right on track for the 7:05. I figured it would take some few minutes to get that settled up.
Yeah,
So.
always allow for technology. Okay, so first of all, thank you very much for giving us some time tonight, but also for the check, which of course we just got, and second year in a row. So thank you very much for your continued support. That's me. So I better know how to run a computer, given what I do for a living. So Main Street Credit Union is right in the area, not just of Strathroy, but of course Adelaide Metcalfe as well, and very, very, me personally, but the organization also committed to our hospitals. So, just a map. We've used this a couple of times now, and I think for me, what it really talks about is ease of access. There's our little hospital in the middle and everything that's around. And I don't know if any of you have gone into London to go to a doctor's appointment, but I would much rather go to Strathroy Hospital. I mean, it's not only is it traffic-wise less difficult, but it's also when you walk in, it's small. People know you. You're not a number. It's relatively easy to navigate. It's a short walk from parking into the building, things like that. So there's lots of things that come with any smaller community that, of course, we bring at Strathroy Hospital as well. But we also are a big economic contributor to our communities. We actually have 400 nurses and 170 doctors and about $30 million in salaries and benefits, which go right into the community. And the total budget's about $40 million for the hospital. So again, whether it's people or whether it's goods and services, it is a real economic engine for the area. And lots of volunteers as well. I'm not sure if you're aware, but we have 99 volunteers working for the hospital, and they put in about 11,500 hours a year. And then we have 190 volunteers in the auxiliary who really exist to provide service, but also to donate back to the foundation, which are just under 12,000 volunteers a year. So lots of really good support from our community, which is wonderful. But to me, it is about ease of use. I just have to say that. I just don't think there's anything that can compare. But we thought you might be interested in seeing what actually happens with Adelaide Metcalfe from a usage perspective. So we know that hospital overall, the usage has gone up about 17.75% year over year. But this is just Adelaide Metcalfe, which is up 31%, which is, I think it'll show, no, I won't play with it. But it's up 31% year over year. I think that the interesting piece, the lab, increased use in the lab, the one that dropped, the 73% for echo seems shocking, but it's really only 27 people. So, but it's just a really positive number, and it's nice to see the usage go up of our hospital. The more people that use our hospital, of course, the more sustainable we are, and things like that. Any questions on that one? I think it's probably the most complicated one, but also to me the best one. So I thought I would talk a little bit about support. Of course, we know that Adelaide Metcalfe has been extremely generous. We've gotten $33,200 from you year to date. But I thought I'd talk about the other support we get. Provincial support is really almost on a one-off. If there's some money available, you know, you can sort of submit. We've replaced our boilers. There was some good info on Facebook about that a few months ago. The building has been reclad. It's a much nicer looking building now. But that's the kind of thing we get from the province. From the county, I'm not sure if you're aware, but Lambton County has committed just over $1 million over 10 years for a new x-ray suite to replace one of our x-ray suites. So we're pretty excited about that. And then of course at the municipal level, Adelaide Metcalfe has, as I said, given $33,200 in two donations. Strathroy Carrock over 2 years gave $200,000. We'll be going back to them again this year to look for a new commitment. So that was $100,000 for over 2 years. And North Middlesex has committed over 10 years at $400,000, so at $40,000 a year. So thank you very much for your support. It is greatly appreciated and proportionately exactly what we were looking for, and we appreciate it very much. Just a little bit about the new things. There is new OBGYN program, so we're really excited about that. We have a new doctor on staff that's in the white coat on the slide is our new doctor, and we're very pleased. The goal is to increase our baby births by 75 a year until we get up to 400. So, you know, I know in Strathroy, certainly our staff, not that many were interested in having their babies at Strathroy Hospital, but now with this new young female OBGYN, we're really excited, and we think it'll be a good program for Strathroy Hospital. And I believe that that's all I have.
Thank you, Janet. Is there any questions or comments at all from council?
You know us well. It's our third time here. In recent history as well.
Okay, thank you very much for coming, and
okay.
I'm sure we'll be seeing you in the new year.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So we're going to jump into our correspondence. The first section is the upcoming conferences, seminars, and meetings. So we have our regular meetings coming up on July 23rd, 2018, August 13th, and September 4th. And then the AMO conference is scheduled for August 19th to 22nd, 2018, and that's in Ottawa. Correspondence item number 1 is from the Strathroy District Chamber of Commerce, and it's the Chamber News for July. Item number 2 is from North Middlesex, and it's a notice of application VO6-2018, and it's for Adwoods Farms Limited, along with the notice of public meeting. Is there any questions or concerns with that?
I was just going to say, did you want a motion that we have no concerns, so they're aware? So
Can we
moved.
get that? Okay, and a seconder for that? Councilor Hendricks. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. And then item number 3 is from the Middlesex Palms Association, and it's the invitation to the 78th Annual Middlesex County Plowing Match. Next section, which is the recommended readings. Item number 4 is from AMO, and it's the New Ontario Government Takes Office. Item number 5 is from AMO as well, and it's the MEPCO update regarding OMERS. Item number 6 is from the Ossawa Bayfield Conservation Authority, and it's their June meeting and minutes. Item number 7 is from Blue Water Recycling Association, and it's the June 2018 meeting highlights. Item number 8 is from the Middlesex London Health Unit, and it's the report on new Smoke-Free Ontario Act 2017. Item number 9 is from the Ontario SPCA, and it's in regards to the 2018 No Hot Pets campaign. Item number 10 is from SWIFT, and it's regarding the City of London joining SWIFT and issuing requests for information and support for better broadband for everyone. Is there any questions at all on any of the correspondence? Okay, a motion then to receive, the council receive and file correspondence items CC1 to CC10. Councilor Sanders and Councilor Hendricks. All those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. And next we have the committee minutes, and we just have the one there, which is the Emergency Control Group minutes of June 19th, 2018. We can have a mover and seconder to receive those minutes. Deputy Mayor Stockman and Councilor Sanders. All those in favor? Opposed? And carried. We have a few minutes before we get into our next delegation, so we'll go to our first staff report, which is our Public Works Manager's report. Jeff Little.
Mr. Mayor, basically it's information report for July. Follow-up from June, dust control is complete, weed and scrabble is complete. What's happening in July, we are going to start, well, we did start Scotchmere Drive today. The reclaimed asphalt is going down. It'll take about 8 days, so I'm thinking sometime in the middle of next week. Scotchmere, the 3 blocks should be, I don't want to call it pavement, but it's the reclaim that goes down and hard surface. So and that'll sit for a month or so to cure, and then we'll top it with a tarp on top of it. We are preparing to start Sexton and Melwood Drive ditching, which is part of the Hay Drain project. We did a little bit last week out there to get some prep work done, but by the middle of this week and into next week, we should be on Melwood and on Sexton working on that project. So, and then later in the month, near the end of July, we will start walkers, beginning with culverts and cross culverts and laneway culverts and that sort of thing. Update on equipment, the new trailer has arrived. We used it last week. Pretty straightforward. And the big news is the backhoe should be arriving anytime. I'm expecting this week, late this week. So that's really good news. So hopefully next council meeting there'll be a new backhoe to see. So. And basically, that's a pretty busy July for us with all the heat. So basically, There is, everything's been in the budget for what I've talked about, so there's no financial impact. And being an information meeting, just to update you that you accept the report.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. Any questions at all?
I got one
Councillor
question.
Sanders?
So the culverts and the new culvert, do the township do that themselves, or do we get outside?
On walkers?
Yes.
Yeah, no, we're gonna do them ourselves. We've got the
Because-
culverts. Yep.
My question is because when I went over this, usually I thought last year when we did a project like Walker's, a certain amount of kilometers, we tendered that project, either Mays or what's his name. We had 2 or 3 tenders that time. We didn't do that this year, did we?
Not doing that this year. There'll be activities that will get quotations done for it. So if there's a culvert that we are unable to install, it's deep, it needs excavator work, we'll get quotes on the jobs rather than having quotes on an excavator just to be there. Because there'll be a lot of times where there's just no need for the excavator to be there. So I'm quoting the jobs that the excavator is needed for it to be there. So, or the trucking. I shouldn't just, it could be trucking, it could be excavator work, it could be any outside contractor work. But we're going to do quotes on the jobs that are needed.
Okay.
Okay? So,
And I think it'll be nice to see a comparison of Walker's Drive for these 3 blocks in comparison to the previous 3 or the previous 3.
Because I'm sure didn't we tender and say what's the name did the whole work for that section and the trucking, and we used our own trucks, but of course we had outside help with trucks too. So I just had that understanding that we always going to tender, but if that's the way you're going to do it, that'd fine. It'd be nice to compare it, like Curtis says, because I always am a firm believer in tendering.
Oh yeah, Mr. Mayor, and part of the reason we're doing it this way is that a lot of the work on walkers we can do. There's not as many as the dig outs, the culverts. I think there's only about 2 culverts that we need an excavator for. So a lot of that work on walkers can be done in-house. The real question is the time and the availability of our crews to get all the work done. Will be the big question there. And then when it comes down to trucking material, and that'll be a different type of tender where I'll be quoting material and trucking to the project. So.
Councillor Kenny?
Given the heat that we've had and the humidity the past week or 2, have you changed your hours of work, starting earlier and quitting earlier as well?
We've talked about it. So far. We've had on one occasion where we knew the temperature was going to be quite high through that day. We did start early.
Yeah.
To get most of the majority of the work done before lunch.
Yeah.
So, but generally, when we're working in the equipment or around the equipment, it all depends on the activity of the day. So if we're in our grader or our backhoes, we don't really need to adjust the hours that much.
Okay, because of the air conditioning.
Exactly.
One more quick one.
Yep, go ahead.
Sexton, will you do most of that yourself, or?
Sexton is, we've already had, the prelim was a contractor, gave us a hand, get some stumps out. But yeah, for the rest of the work, it'll be mostly ditching, which will be in-house, will be our graders. In fact, I'm thinking both graders will be down there at once, so it should be good.
I'll bring a chair and watch.
Okay, any other questions at all? Yeah, Deputy Mayor Stockman?
So the backhoe, that's a lot quicker than you anticipated, wasn't it? Or?
Yeah, I was originally when the tender was awarded, when we talked to Caceres, they were concerned about the length of time for it to come. So when he looked at what was coming through or what was already coming out in different dealerships, he was able to locate a unit that met our requirements, and he said it was either if he got it, it was coming, which it is. If not, it was going to be October. Yeah. So yeah. He warned us both ways. I think not to just in
So,
case.
so he basically, they were able to make a deal with another dealer to
I don't know exactly the ins and outs. All I know is he was able to secure the unit. So which he couldn't guarantee that when we first discussed it. So
So basically, you'll be able to use it for all the construction.
exactly. Yeah, it'll be out on the construction site.
Okay. Any other questions? No. Okay. And the seconder to move the report, Councillor Hendricks. All those in favor? Opposed, and that's carried. Okay. So we're going to hop into our second delegation, which is the Middlesex London Health Unit, and we have Maureen and Jordan here. Take a seat in the hot seat, as we like to call it around here.
Oh, great. That sounds friendly. Do we have the presentation on the computer?
No, but everyone has it at their.
We all have it on yeah.
Okay. So then I'll load the paper version. So
Yes.
we'll keep ourselves on track with the paper version.
So, floor is all yours to have a presentation.
Thank you very much. Through you, Your Worship, we thank you for the opportunity to present to you this evening around the work that we're doing at the health unit within our communities, as well as we'll have Jordan actually present on the review that we're doing of our services in the municipalities as well, and then we're happy to answer any questions that you have. So really just here to talk to you today a little bit about what public health is, what our mandate is, where we actually get our requirements for the services that we provide out in the municipality as well. So what we'll cover tonight, as I said, is really talk about what public health is, what are our standards and approaches that we actually take to it, the collaboration that we do within our work, the types of partnerships that we actually form with other organizations and municipalities, what our service delivery model is. We'll talk a little bit about our funding and how we go about using the dollars that we are provided. And then Jordan will actually talk to you about the public health review that we're doing of our services in the municipalities. So sorry, just trying to make sure I stay on track. I know that can be a little distracting as I flip the pages, but really public health is all those types of services that are really upstream focused and really looking at the population as a whole, as well as individuals within the communities, and looking at how do we actually work in parallel with the healthcare system, but actually do things to try to promote population health. So we do work in areas around social determinants of health. We know that they play a major role within individuals' lifestyle and within their ability to achieve optimal levels of health. So that has to do with your socioeconomic status, what your education level is, what types of access do you have to things in your communities. So we work in those types of areas within healthy communities. We will work with municipalities. We will work with parks and recreation, for example, looking at how can we create a healthy built environment. So making sure that there's safe walkable routes for individuals within their communities. There's places that they can get fresh fruits and vegetables. Do they have food security or not within their communities? So we look at a broad range of types of programs and services in that area. We also work very closely with our community partners, and a lot of our personnel are actually out in the field the majority of their day. So they'll be out in the schools, and I'll talk a little bit more about this in a few moments, but in a lot of areas of where you work, live, and play, there are public health personnel who are in all of those areas, the touch points that we have within our communities. And we also look at what the latest evidence is. So one of the things that we are responsible for is staying on top of the population health within our communities, looking at the best evidence that's available at the current time, and then adjusting our programs and services as required or if needed based upon that. And sometimes we try to get as close to local data as we can for each of our program areas, and then we'll look towards regional, provincial, and then national type of data as required, depending on the availability of information that we can work within. So our mandate really comes from the legislation around the Health Protection and Promotion Act. And this is actually the legislation that lays out our Board of Health mandate what our constituency will be within our Board of Health and what their accountability framework is. And from that, we actually look at our programs and services. And it provides the power for the boards of health and our medical officer of health to do the work that we need to do in communities. So for example, to go out and do inspections, we actually get our right to actually do that through this legislation. But it also holds us accountable to achieve the results which the government lays down for us at the same time. And within that, we actually, I should say in conjunction with that, we have our Ontario Public Health Standards. And they actually lay out what it is that we are required to accomplish. So if you actually go to the slide where you will actually see the public health standards, you'll see some blocks in blue and some in green, just to let you know where I am. Basically, when you look at the 4 foundational standards, so they're in blue on your presentation, they really speak to what underpins everything else that we do. And so those are foundational blocks that we work within any other area. So that's around the population health assessment that I talked about. The health equity, it's something that we take very seriously within the health unit. And that is really focusing upon the needs of priority populations, looking at their social determinants of health, and really looking at, we have a broad mandate to provide programs and services across all communities, but then looking at how can we actually take some of our services and reach more vulnerable populations, so that we can sometimes target some of our programs and services that, for example, with our oral health professionals, our hygienists who go out to the schools, sometimes we'll actually spend more time in certain schools than others because we know there is a greater need and that some of those students wouldn't have access to some of those services otherwise. So we do pay very close attention to that within our work. Looking at effective public health practice, we're always on top of that, and emergency management. But then as you can see through there, there's a whole range of different areas that we focus in, whether it's safe water, it's oral health, whether it's infectious disease control or management. So if there's an outbreak, we are required to actually do an investigation, and we mobilize our resources to actually try to contain that, and then work with what other organizations we may need to assist in those particular areas. So that gives you a broad idea. And it goes anywhere from, as I say, from prenatal time, from when someone first realizes that they're pregnant, or even sometimes it's the counseling of younger women sometimes around the needs for healthy reproductive practices, through prenatal care, all the way up to end of life. Basically, we have services that cover that entire time frame within our organizations in the health units. But we can't accomplish all of that on our own, and that's one of the reasons why we're here today, is really just to give you a bit of an update on the work that we do and where we are, but also recognize that our municipalities are really key players in public health. And that if you look at the last century in public health, some of the greatest advances that have actually made, that have had significant difference in people's health outcomes, is really the work that we do in conjunction with municipalities. So with some of those rules that you provide about safe practices on the road, making sure that people are educated, some of the campaign works that you do, making safer roads, making it safer for individuals to actually work and have to have active transportation is really important. If you look at sanitation and sewers, the municipalities have had a significant role in those particular areas. You look at clean water, you look at tobacco control policies. That's one of the big things, and I know that you received a report on the Smoke-Free Ontario Act this evening. I heard that mentioned. We are actually going to be submitting another board report because the Ontario government has just announced that they will be delaying the implementation. Will they do some more work on that? So there's the types of works and areas that we can actually work together in partnership on within our municipalities as well. So just really wanting to highlight that everywhere in I shouldn't say everywhere, but most places within the municipality, there will be some touch points with public health. So it is our oral health team actually going out to your schools. There'll be public health nurses who go out to the schools as well. Sometimes it's vaccinations that they're providing. Sometimes with the young adults, it really is around what are some of the situational supports that they require. So we have public health nurses who are in the schools. They're a safe individual for people to go to talk to. They get education, they get referred out to other types of services. As I say, we are out inspecting pools, we inspect spas. When you go to the barber to get your haircut, we go into those types of organizations. Where if you go out to eat within your community, we have health inspectors who go out and inspect. So I know we talk a lot about having physical locations and offices where, yes, some of our staff actually sit on a regular basis, but we do actually have staff every day who are out in your communities where you live, work, and play. So really just wanted to give you a little bit of talk. So I'm on the budget slide and the program, actually the program service delivery. And it's really just to talk about that in 2017, we had over 15,000 contacts with individuals within the municipality. So that doesn't include the contacts we've had in our London offices directly with individuals. And it doesn't include all of the emails and phone calls that we actually receive. So you can, and that, you know, doesn't count up necessarily all the work that we do in our communities as well. So it just kind of gives you a slice around that, and it really is that health education piece. It is about prevention, immunizations, so there's a lot of work, and our teams work hand in hand together. So, that's one thing that we always try to improve upon, is knowing that if there's a team out in the community on this particular issue, that they're informed enough that they can actually, at a critical touch point with an individual, talk to them about some of the health services that we do. And a prime example would be when we have a tobacco enforcement officer out, and he meets an individual who's smoking in an area that breaks the legislation. It's not just about the enforcement and saying you're wrong. A lot of the time it's about education to that person, particularly the first time that they encounter someone. But sometimes an individual will actually talk to the tobacco enforcement officer about the fact that they're kind of interested in quitting. And so we actually have information, we have a quit clinic where we can help individuals actually on their way to reducing their tobacco. So, you know, we try to educate the staff so that we're very broad in the approach that we actually do. Flipping over to the budget, so we have an annual budget of around $35 million, and on your slide you can see there basically is a breakdown of where we actually get our funding. And you can see that we do get a amount of money from the municipality, and we thank you very much for the funding that you provide to us to enable us to really increase the population health within your communities. But one of the things we really want to talk about is that we do get the revenue from a number of sources, but we're also very careful about how we actually spend our dollars. So every year within our organization, we actually go through an exercise where every team within the organization has to look at the programs and services that they're doing, look at are there efficiencies, and then look at the greater good for the organization. So we will sometimes, well, every year we have the discussion on, is it more important that we keep a service in this area, or should we transfer that funding over to another team and they could actually do something that has more of an impact? So if you look at the opioid crisis in our areas nowadays, you look at the safe consumption sites, that's a prime example of there are times when we need to look at our work. Everything is very important that we do, but look at kind of how we allocate. And the one other point I want to make around that is you'll see on one of your slides is that over the last 14 years, we have not asked for an increase from the municipalities in the funding. And we're able to do that because we're always stopping on an annual basis and reassessing what we can do and how we can provide our services. And I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you.
Very briefly, I'll provide you with an overview of a public health service review that is currently ongoing by our program planning and evaluation team at the Middlesex London Health Unit. Each and every one of the programs that my colleague Maureen described undergoes an annual or for even more frequent process of improvement planning, looking at what populations most specifically need those programs and services, as well as what are the most effective ways of delivering those specific services. And this service review isn't necessarily about finding out specifically what each and every program can improve, but what the health unit overall can consider in terms of strategies for enhancing our effectiveness and our ability to deliver those services to your residents. And we're here specifically at your council today because you are the representatives of your community who knows that community best. And as those representatives, we are really here to look for your feedback. And I will give you a brief overview of the survey that I'll leave you with tonight. If you flip over the slide from Middlesex County Public Health Services Review, this is just a little bit of the process that we are undertaking. We started in about April with some of the data collection internally, and this opportunity to speak with you at the councils is a really important piece. In addition to that, what we're also doing is looking at each and every health unit across Ontario that's of similar composition to us. So Middlesex London is considered an urban-rural mix. There are several other health units that are like us, Lambton County, Chatham, Kent, Wellington, Dufferin, and Guelph. What we're looking to understand from each and every one of these other health units is what are some of their strategies or ways of delivering services that they're incorporating to improve the health specifically of their rural residents. What are some of those things that we can learn from some of our peer health unit groups to make sure that we're able to provide as good a services as possible. The community consultation piece is really out speaking with you as the representatives of your community. So we have a survey here that I'm hoping to leave with each of you tonight. You could fill it in either on paper, or there's a link there if you prefer to complete it electronically. And then another important piece of that, because it's difficult to get that depth of information, that really rich understanding of your community, is a key informant interview. So we've been asking each of the mayors to set up a time to have a brief key informant interview, or it can be another representative of your council as well if the mayor would like to delegate that responsibility. In addition to that, we are looking at literature and research from across not only Ontario, but the United States, the rest of Canada. Australia actually has some comparable communities to Ontario in terms of that urban-rural mix. We have epidemiologists whose job is to really understand what the underlying mortality and morbidity trends are in our community. We're having them specifically look at what are some of those trends in the rural communities in Middlesex London, rather than looking at Middlesex London as one contiguous area. We're also doing a review of the services that, as Maureen talked about, to understand deeply how do they approach the differences in populations between an urban and rural mix. So understanding if there's program by program examples of how they're attempting to enhance that service to our rural residents. And then we're also looking to understand what are those assets in your communities, whether it's a comprehensive library, whether it's a community center. What are those community assets that we should be aware of if we don't already know of them, that are potential opportunities for us to deliver services in? Are there organizations that we should be partnering with because they're the best connection to your residents rather than us trying to make those connections on our own? And really understanding what the strengths of your community are, because those are the best ways of allowing us to work effectively with each and every one of the municipalities. And then with all of those pieces of information, coming to some recommendations for our organization of what are some tangible ways that we can improve the services to each and every one of our residents in Middlesex County, and presenting those to the Middlesex County Council in the fall, and as well feeding back any of that information to each and every one of the municipalities across Middlesex County. Thank you.
Thank you, Jordan and Maureen. Is there any questions at all from council? Councilor McKinnon?
Just when you reallocated that $7 million, was that for the opium crisis?
So, through you, Your Worship, the $7 million reallocation has been something that's occurred over 5 years now. So, it hasn't specifically been $7 million towards the opioid crisis in our community. It's really been addressing a whole range of public health issues that have occurred over the past 5 years, some of which has specifically been the opioid crisis. We have been fortunate that the provincial government has provided some specific funding for that health need in our community, but we certainly have used the program budgeting marginal analysis process to address not only the opioid crisis, but many other emerging public health issues in our community.
My other one was just a comment. It's strange to see that the Public Health Ontario only provides you with $106,000 a year.
Through your worship, that's specifically Public Health Ontario acts more of as an advisory agency to us.
Okay.
Majority of our funding comes through the Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care. The Public Health Ontario funding specifically is for some library services that we provide internally.
Okay.
So we actually act as a hub for all of the other Southwestern Ontario health units, where we provide them with expertise to their public health professionals when they're looking at what's some of the newest research on any of these health topics. Because we have some expertise in-house at the Middlesex London Health Unit, that funding allows us to share that expertise with our neighboring health units.
Thank you, Jordan.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Mr. Crosstalk, all the questions they had. So I think Council's looking forward to receiving the survey and hopefully getting back to you as soon as possible. I'm assuming there's a deadline on there as to when to get back, or?
What we're looking to have these in by is the end of the month. We are analyzing them and inputting the data as you submit it. And usually the quicker you do it, the less likely you are to forget to do it. I know, thinking of myself personally, if I put something down, it likely goes into a pile that gets forgotten. So, at your convenience, and we will be following up with a reminder, email-wise, if that's what you prefer as well. So, who may I leave these with?
I can take them.
And is this the last stop on the lower tier councils, or is there
Two more to go.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
We're about 30 minutes behind on the next one, but I'm assuming you're Lindsay Linker? Perfect. When I come up to the seat there. And Lindsay's here for the request of the speed reduction on Pike Road between the CN tracks and Healy Drive. Okay, welcome.
Hi, my name is Lindsay Linker. I'm a resident on Iceside Road. Thank you for giving us the time to come to you tonight. Currently the speed limit is 80 and we'd like to see it reduced to 50 between the CN tracks and Healy Drive. Most houses along that stretch have either children or grandchildren. And it's a safety concern, as well as the stop sign by the two homes that are right at the stop sign. You see a lot of drivers go through it. I think it's just too quick and they don't realize the signs there. We do have a petition that we sent around. We'd like to see, for the residents walking to town, biking to town, just to be safer. And 80 is, we have no shoulder on the side of the road either, so 80 is a little bit quick. I know when my kids first started going to school, our bus stop was on Mapperton, and we had to drive them every day because in the winter we weren't having them walk down the road with no shoulder at 80. We did take some pictures as well.
You can,
Pass them?
Yeah, pass them. That'd be perfect.
So I think the first one there is facing the tracks, and then facing the sign, and then these ones are showing you.
Oops, this is my email too.
Oh, sorry. Sorry.
Those ones are more looking at the stop sign at the corner, the intersection. Just one where you can see the stop sign.
Yeah.
We've also had increased traffic with the land transfer station, and it's quite quick. the signatures, talking to the residents, I was pretty confident everyone would sign. I didn't realize how frustrated everybody was with the speed.
Am I allowed to speak?
Hmm?
Am I allowed to speak?
You're not technically on it, but I think you're a combined
Part of the
unit. You're part of the, yeah.
Yeah,
That's
the only
fine.
thing I'd like to say is, I did send an email, and I was told it would be looked at by the end of the year or the end of summer or something. And I did also talk to email the county, who basically I was told that if we had a problem with the stop sign, we needed to call the police to kind of regulate the stop sign, but I just don't think that it's big enough. I've requested since we moved there, it was gravel. Then they hard topped it. I asked for speed bumps. They told me they were trying to get rid of the bumps in the road. I said the bumps didn't bother me. Then I asked for those strips on the road. The machine was up north, and then I heard from others that, oh, you don't want to put strips on the road because the only people that hear them are the people in the houses.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that didn't happen because it wouldn't have bothered me, but Lindsay it would have. Yeah, and I don't know where else to go with this. That's why I took these pictures. I did post it on Facebook, and just to get comments, you know, what do you see at this corner? And well, yeah, nobody really commented towards what I was looking for until my son said, does anybody see the stop sign? We've seen lots of near misses. We've had minor accidents at the corner. Why they don't see it, I don't know, whether it's because that line, like Napperton, dips down. So they're you know, looking, they're 15 seconds ahead and just seeing that road over there, not seeing the stop sign.
The few times I've been at that intersection, I have seen someone go through.
So I did come to the township one time when there was an accident, a minor accident there, and it did pertain to some of our postal people from Adelaide Village, thinking if I came then, that maybe, oh, these are names we know. Then I was said they would check it out with the police, and I said, you're not going to get reports with the police because these are, a lot of them are near misses. When Charlie was sick and he sat and looked out the window, he just like, wow. You know, they hit the brakes at our laneway, which is like 500 feet from the corner, and just sail over.
With the petition, did you make a copy of that? Or just the original?
I was just going to give you the original.
Well, we make a copy of it that way. Yeah.
Yeah,
Make sure
okay.
you have a
We'll
copy.
make sure
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Is there any questions is that the end of your presentation before I ask questions of council?
Sure.
Did you want to leave those pictures as well? If you could,
You
we can make
have my pictures.
we
can have
can
my
we can
pictures
make copies and send them back as well.
I have my
so.
own copies on my
Okay.
Yeah, I do too, so.
Councilor Hendrickson, do you have a question or comment?
More of a comment. I'd agree that I always thought it was, when I first started, I had a friend move out in that area and I started using that road more often. It always kind of astounded me that the speed limit was 80 through a residential area. But I thought, well, there's a stop sign, people have to slow down anyways. But I think if you don't, and I think that's probably a good part of the problem, is a lot of people are using that road now to get around Highway 81 and the construction or any other construction that's been going on. And I think a lot of people aren't looking for the stop sign because they're on a fairly busy paved road. So I agree that it's I know it's there and I stop, but I suspect it's probably not really visible.
Councilor Kinnan?
I think when the railway tracks were so rough, that naturally slowed us all down. And then I just never got my speed up from the railway to the stop sign, but I think it's
Even
it's
if-
a reasonable request to ask that it be 50 or 40, whichever.
I think it's I think it's also a shortcut to go to avoid town and go to like a superstore. So people are coming from Glencoe and just
And going right down Pike, yeah.
We have transports too that are going at 80 in front of our homes.
Mm.
Deputy Stockman?
I think the big thing is the fact that it has become a bypass Strathroy. And my suggestion would be to see if whether, I don't know if it's our stop sign or whether it's the county stop
it's the
sign,
county.
to put up a bigger stop sign.
Can I speak in? I did send the email that I sent to Jeff. I did send to the county because Charlie got a name from here to send to the county, and they were the ones that had said that. So they replaced our 911 sign because somebody stole it. As for the rumble strips and speed reduction on Pike, those are handled by the township as it is not our road. The stop and stop ahead are looked after by the county, and they would have someone take a look and make sure they are meeting standards. So the stop sign and the stop ahead sign are the county's.
So then my suggestion would be to ask the county to put up one of the bigger ones.
Or through our mayor, take it to county council.
I think the best route would be some other councils that they have a reduction of speed or they're requesting something like that. They send a letter from council. So I would suggest if we want to do that, it'd be best to do that through a motion of council, and then it would go to the county engineer, and then if it's something that would be brought to county council, then it would be discussed there. But I think that would be something that it would be just dealt with with staff. But I think having a motion of council would be best to do that. Okay. Councillor Sanders?
So my question is, why is that still 80 in the city limits? Is that our issue? It's our issue.
Yeah.
On
our
Pike,
road.
yes.
It's our road.
Mhm.
So then it's our responsibility. And I agree with Curtis, I think we better start here and then go to the county. And I think it should be either an orange light in that intersection or a stop sign with a flashing red light. Something that is very visible. Because it has a lot of traffic. I realize, because everybody goes to the arena, everybody they all slide down that Pike Road anymore. I do. I know lots of people that do. So if it's our problem, we got to deal with it, and it should something be done. That not just say we'll do it. We're gonna do it, and we're gonna do it soon.
With the blinking red light, since it is the stop sign is a county stop sign.
Yes.
The county does not allow for the blinking red lights anymore. They found that it's actually more distracting.
Okay.
So I think there's only one left in the county, and that will be removed shortly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
No, just so
I'm
you
just
know.
saying something that's very visible.
Yeah.
Or a bigger sign.
Bigger sign.
Or a light in the middle of the road unnampered, and it's either red or yellow, or that you have to stop. Something. Or rumble lines. I don't care. Maybe people don't like it, but
You can, on a night, you can hear those.
oh, you can hear them a
sounds.
mile away. I can hear them at Patterson in my house,
Yes.
but I mean, at least the guy in the car, he knows they're there.
Unless it's on the wrong side of the road.
Can I
I'll move
suggest?
that a
Thank you.
letter go to the county and outline the concerns that we have. And do you want a copy of the petition to be submitted along as well?
The petition itself is just in regards to this 80 kilometers. Has
Okay.
nothing to do
No, yeah,
with
no,
the stop
I
sign.
think that's our
Yeah,
issue.
this is ours, but then
Alright, so a larger sign
yeah.
and take the concerns.
And how big a procedure is get it to go down from 80 to 50 or 40 or what are we looking at, 50? I would say 50 is reasonable. Kimmy,
Yeah.
My name
Sure,
is
yeah.
Mayor. We had a request just at our last council meeting, and we did pass a resolution that we would look at the different areas and set up a criteria to start investigating those approaches coming up to county roads and setting up some sort of a system so we can determine which ones are a priority. There are lots of areas that we have concerns of this type. So Jeff has started looking into determining what our priorities are and where we're going to start with those, and then come back with a bylaw that addresses the speed limit reductions.
Okay, I'm all in favor of that. Is it gonna take it 2 years, 3 years, or 6 months?
It'll take some time to do some research to find out, to set our criteria, and then get developing the appropriate speed limits. And again, the factor comes into enforcement becomes an issue, and how we're going to ensure that there is enforcement to a bylaw, because passing a bylaw with no enforcement is not of any value to anyone.
That's right. It has
So
to
we
go
have to
through
be
the
able to
courts.
get it, find out how we're going to enforce it and who's going to be doing the enforcement of it.
Deputy Stockman?
I think we just go and ask for the big stop sign,
Yes.
because exactly what Kathy said about, you know, there's been another request for slowing down. If we say, well, we're gonna look at it, and we give it to another group, you know, that's not being fair to everybody. I think we just go for the big sign right now and wait for the report to come out on the speed reduction.
Yeah, I know, I realize that, but you know, if we work at it, how long is it gonna take? I mean, a lot of times things take 5 years. I mean, I don't think these people wanna wait another 5 years to have a speed reduction. Can we do this in 6 months or a year, or how fast can we do this?
So before we get onto that, we have the motion, Council McKinnon was moving to have a letter requesting to the county for a larger sign. Is that right? You
Yes.
have like a specific
Letter.
wording you have?
Resolved that council send a letter of request to County Middlesex to install a larger stop sign at Pike Road and Healy Drive.
Pike and Napperton.
Napperton, thank you.
Okay. Okay, do you have a seconder for that? Council Hendricks, any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed, and that's carried. Okay, now with the speed. I just looked up, because I was thinking this kind of the same line as Councillor Sanders with how long is it going to take, and in the resolution did not put in a specific time as when it's going to come back. So I would ask either Jeff or Kathy how long, and if we could have another motion to say have that deadline so we know when it's going to come back to council.
Mr. Mayor, we have been talking about it, and I wanted a report to come back to council this fall, and then proceed with the report from there. So I'm thinking a couple months for the report.
And then what's the next procedure?
Through the mayor, I believe then we have to develop a bylaw so that we can enforce it, and then go from there. And once the bylaw is in place, we can install the signs.
Well, that shouldn't take that long.
Well, the
That's
bylaw
good.
can take a long time to get through the courts, because you have to set your fines, and then they look at word for word of the bylaw, and then it will be the judge that passes the bylaw. Then when Kathy sends it in, she'll send in the bylaw, the list of the fines, and the police can then enforce it and give the fines. So that one can take a while.
Well, that's something that's out of our hands, but we gotta get it there.
Yeah, yes, to get it there.
Is everyone satisfied with the 2
I
months
can
and
live
then the
with 2
fall?
months, yeah. You need a motion for that, or?
No, we don't. I just didn't know if council wanted to have a motion of, say, the first meeting in October or something like that, so we knew, so then our delegation knows and our
Knows
previous
when,
delegation
so
knows
that
when
we-
it'll be
yep.
coming in front of council. That's all I was wondering. Would you like to do that, or?
Yeah, I would like to do that, yes. I'd like to make a motion that we have either the presentation at the first October meeting. Is that possible, Jeff?
More than possible.
I can live with that.
Okay, and seconder? Okay, Councillor McKinnon, any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Okay, so we'll have that report, first meeting in October.
Great. Yep, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Will you make a copy of the?
I think Kathy, you're going to be making the copy.
Yes,
and
I will
sending
send it back to you,
Okay.
if that's okay,
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
Perfect.
we'll make sure you get it.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Oh, we have an next delegation.
They're sitting up there.
Jeez. I should stay.
I believe, yeah.
Oh, no, but something's got to be done there.
Well, I think
Something has to be done.
Big
Whatever.
Yep.
And it's got to be slowed down. That should be 50. Oh, come on.
You gotta stop there anyway, so you're slowing
Yeah,
down.
but it shouldn't be 80 when it's all built up. Come on, you go to the other side of Strathmore and it's 50 until you get halfway to Kerwood.
Okay. Our
Yes.
delegations are right on track for being about 20 minutes apart, and that's how long everybody's talking. I'm not saying that, Mariah, you need to speak for 20 minutes, but that's what everybody else seems to be doing. So we have Mariah Minton here, and she's requesting request for sponsorship for Team Canada Dance. And before you start, I just want to say congratulations on what you've been able to accomplish.
Thank you. So Mariah is going to start. Before we get started, I just wanted to share how extremely nervous she is right now. Mariah dances. She does not public speak. It's not her forte. She tried everything to get me to speak tonight, and it's not happening. I'm not very fond of it either, but obviously with age and experience, it comes a lot easier, right? So Mariah's, with her permission, is going to read what she's prepared, if that's okay with everyone. So, and thank you for allowing me to share her with you tonight as well. And loud.
We're just your neighbors, just talking
Yeah.
to us.
Right. And we've all eaten.
Thank you for taking the time to listen to me talk a little about myself tonight and about the amazing, incredible experience that I have coming up in September. So to start, let me tell you a little bit about myself. I'm 15 years old, the oldest of my 5 siblings. I live in Adelaide Metcalfe Township on Townsend Line. I started grade 9 at SCCI this fall in Strathroy after being homeschooled for the last 6 years. I really love the whole homeschool atmosphere with the benefits that come along with it, like spending a lot of time with my family and being able to sleep in. But I also was ready for a change. I loved every aspect of high school from a social perspective it allowed to the academic achievements that I received. I'm happy to report that my final average for the past year was a 93%. I just started a summer online course in civics and careers last week. It's proving to be a lot more work, but so far I'm really enjoying the material. When not studying, I enjoy volunteering. It allows me to give back to others in the community and help organizations run programs that otherwise might not be able to run. I spend over 60 hours each summer volunteering at 2 local church VBS programs. I also volunteer when I'm available, assisting with children's liturgy programs at our own church on Sundays, as well as being an important teaching assistant every week from September to May for my dance studio, Dance Factory Studios. The dance studio is truly a home away from home. I actually spend almost 20 hours a week training in all styles of dance at the studio, while still balancing my schoolwork and of course some social commitments. I didn't start out this way though, dancing all night and day. Yes, it's true, I have been dancing since the age of 3, but I didn't start competitively dancing till an old age of 11. Yes, this is a very old age to begin competitive dancing. So like I said, I began competitive dancing only 4 short years ago. Once my first competitive dance season began, I quickly found myself winning 1st, 2nd, or 3rd overalls at competitions throughout the Greater Toronto area, beating out seasoned competitive dancers from significantly bigger studios. I could hardly believe it. It was at this point that my parents and dance teachers knew that I was given a special gift to dance. At the beginning, most of this talent was sheer natural ability, but very quickly, the dedication and hard work also shone through. Over the last 2 years, through hard work and severe dedication, I have won numerous scholarships to California, Florida, New York, Niagara Falls, and Toronto. I've been fortunate enough to attend most of these, meeting incredible people, dancers, and choreographers, but due to cost and distance, unfortunately many went unused. This past summer, I was the finalist at the Western Fair's Rise to Fame Talent Search program, which I just qualified for again at the Delco Bridge Canadian Celebration. This past fall, I attended the North American Trixie Hardy Scholarships in Scarborough after being recognized for my elite technical ability during my dance exams, training with the British Association of Teachers of Dancing this winter. I auditioned for the local part in the Canadian Ballet Organs National Ballet Company, earning a spot in their performance of Anastasia at the River Run Center in Guelph. Which brings us to my most recent endeavor this spring, auditioning for Team Canada's natural dance team. Auditions were held in Oakville this past April, with a callback audition in May, which my mom and I almost missed when we were involved in a car accident on the QEW. But I auditioned with a concussion and all, and a week later we got a very exciting news. I had earned myself a spot on the 2018 Canadian Junior Show Dance team, beating out hundreds of elite dancers vying to represent Canada on an international stage. I believe you were given a copy of the letter from Team Canada's Dance Organization National Director Bonnie Dyer. And if you have a chance to read it, you will understand that this is a very prestigious honor, but also a very expensive one. Each dancer is required to obtain their own sponsors to support them in getting to the World Dance Championships this September in Prague, Czech Republic. We estimate that my own expenses will exceed $6,000. This includes travel accommodations, choreography fees and expenses, rehearsal expenses, and special enrollment with the International Dance Organization, just to name a few. And so, the reason that I'm here in front of you all tonight is that I'm requesting your help. First and foremost, I would love your support as I begin the amazing experience. Just knowing that people in my community are cheering me on and rooting for me to represent our country would be incredible. However, just moral support will not get me as far, so I am asking that if you feel that you would like to support my endeavor in representing our country on an international stage this fall, I would truly appreciate any type of monetary sponsorship that you might be able to contribute. I realize that this request might not be possible, but I would like to thank you anyways for taking the time to listen to me tonight, even though this speaking thing is so much harder than dancing in front of thousands of people. I'm glad I had yet another opportunity to be out of my comfort zone, and I'm glad that I got to share with all of you here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You did an excellent job speaking.
I was impressed too.
Yes. Comments or questions at all from council?
I just wanted to share with her that I used to be a little ballet and tap dancer as well, but not to your degree. And congratulations on sitting in such accolades. Way to go.
Anything else?
Sounds good.
Comments?
Questions?
No?
Okay.
Okay. Any thoughts on monetary donation at all, or?
I think we should, but I think we could discuss that at a later date, so,
Excellent.
yeah, I think we should.
Okay.
Just one question, will you be billeted at someone's home in Czechoslovakia, or?
Do you know what billet it is? It's where you spend in someone else's home so that you don't have to have accommodations, like in a hotel or
I think
anything.
we're in a hotel.
You're in a hotel. So the team requires that the entire team stay together, and then they will travel back and forth together. All chaperones are also required to travel together as well. So yeah, it's a requirement. We were hoping maybe to look for our own accommodations, but it's their mandatory way of doing it.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Good. Well, good luck in your day.
Thank you.
Councillor Sanders?
How many of you will be going? How many is on the team?
There's allowed to be up to 24, but they don't have to have that many. There was an audition, another one not too long ago, to see if they want to add any people. I don't know how many are on the team as of now.
So the last number that we got, they have chosen 10.
10.
Okay.
But they can choose up to 24.
10 out of Canada.
Yeah, so when you say though out of Canada,
Like
it is out of
British
Toronto.
Columbia.
So it is whoever wants to travel. So they have their choreography setting weeks, they have choreography every weekend leading up to it. So from probably somebody from British Columbia won't have the resources or the time to be able to fly every weekend. So realistically, is there people from British Columbia? No. However, we know that there's people out of Quebec that are making the trip down. There are people not just around the Greater Toronto area. There are people from 8 hours away in that. But it is almost more of a provincial thing. However, it is the only official Team Canada team that represents
Yeah, it
Canada.
represents all of Canada.
Right, yeah.
Okay, that was my
Yeah.
question. Thank you.
You're welcome.
There's no other questions at all? Yep.
I was just commenting, and you put on the bottom of your submission your other fundraisers, so we'll be playing euchre.
I can thank my in-laws for that. They're being incredible. Yeah, putting lots of effort into it. And they're also planning on coming as well. They have a nice little apartment that they're getting.
Oh.
Yes. I'm hoping to use their laundry facility.
Okay, thank you very much for your presentation, and good luck for the volleyball tournament and the euchre tournament as well, and then as well as your dancing in coming months. So, congratulations.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening, everyone.
Yeah. Right.
Bye.
Would you like to discuss that now or our next council meeting, whether we'd like to support it all or not?
When is he going? When are they going?
It's in the fall.
It's in the fall.
September, was it?
No,
September.
Do it now.
And
Do it now, do it now.
September sometime, yeah.
Does anybody have a figure in mind? You want me to throw a figure out? I know it probably
Somebody's got
won't
to
be
start
right, but
sometimes.
start somewhere.
Yeah.
$500.
I think that's a reasonable amount.
I was gonna say 1,000, but that wouldn't be right, because then the next one comes, you gotta, I would, she needs 6,000, I think 500 is doing our part.
I was wondering if we have any kind of precedent in the township. Do we have anybody that's competed at this kind of level that we've sponsored before?
Not really.
Deputy Stockman?
A number of years ago, there was somebody came for something, and I forget now what it was. And we said, we appreciate the fact that you're coming, but we
didn't.
We didn't.
I remember we did, because that sets the precedent.
The precedent aspect of it, because you start and that was my thoughts. You start with one, and where do you draw the line?
I know, I realize that, but I don't think it was quite this prestigious. I mean, if you're gonna be on an all-Canada team, she's from the township, I think we have a reason we should donate some money. I'm still gonna stay with $500.
And I'd support the 500.
So that sounds like a motion to me.
For something at this level.
Yeah.
If it was a volleyball tournament down in Toronto.
No, I'd say no.
No.
But this is something I think it's got a special achievement in the township. Well, you need a motion? I will move that we donate $500 towards her trip, or
To represent Canada
or
on
whatever you
team
want, the
Canada
Canada
dance.
team, or
I'll second that.
Okay, and seconded by Councilor McKinnon. Do you have something written on
I
those
do.
lines?
Resolve that council support the request of sponsorship from Ryan Mitten for Team Canada Dance and a monetary donation be made in the amount of $500.
500. Okay, does that sound good, Councilor
Yep.
Sanders? Councilor McKinnon?
do
Okay.
that.
Any further discussion?
I think, given what we give to all the local charities and, the 4-H clubs and the VON and stuff, I think we gotta review that if we're going to give. The only charitable thing we give more money to is the hospital. So I think at some point we need to, I'm not opposed to $500. I think it would have been better if she'd gone to the Optimist club or something like that than come to the township, and I'm not opposed to giving it, but I really think we need to look at our policies of where we throw money and where we don't, and how much we give.
I completely agree, because I think in the list of donations we've done in previous years is just a rollover of what we've done in
Yeah, I think
time.
somebody
So-
said the VON was 50, and I went,
I think the
yeah,
majority are all 100s.
they're
And
hundreds,
they're all
but
100 except for the CMCA.
CMHC.
We give $200, and we give $200 to Federation,
MFA.
Middlesex Federation of Agriculture.
Yeah, so given the effect that has on all the people in our township, I think this is maybe a little much, but I could support it, but I think it's kind of out of proportion to where we give elsewhere.
So it sounds like next year or next term's council has to look at
Yeah,
where the
policies
amounts. I think
and-
Kathy, you can put a note on that for during the budget time.
Mhm.
Okay, so that was moved and seconded for the request for funds for the Team Canada Dance for $500.
Mhm.
All those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried.
I don't even know this girl.
Jeff Mays'
Jeff
granddaughter.
Mays' granddaughter and Joe Minton's granddaughter. They live in the big house on Townsend. Go just off the Curly Road.
Okay, yep.
Okay, so we're going to hop back into our staff reports. And it's 8:20 and we only have one of them done so far. This is amazing. We have so many delegations tonight. Okay, so our next report is from our clerk, Jennifer.
Thanks, Mayor Smith. This report is just an update regarding the legalization of cannabis. Back in October, I presented a report to council regarding the legalization of cannabis, which is known as Bill C-45. At that time, there was talk that it was going to come into legislation July 1st. On Tuesday, June 19th, the Senate voted to accept the latest version of the government's long-debated legal marijuana legislation. C-45 now moves to royal assent. We're the final step in the legislative process, and this can occur within days at the government's discretion. Recreational marijuana will officially become legal in Canada on October 17th, as announced by Prime Minister Trudeau June 20th. There are still a number of lingering questions surrounding drug-impaired driving, which is Bill C-46, and that's the Impaired Driving Act. That has been tabled for now as Senate is recessed for the summer, so hopefully in the fall they'll be debating that bill. Future impacts are still not confirmed as we are not certain of what will be expected. Municipal concerns include enforcement. And my recommendation to council is resolved that council accept the legalization of cannabis update report as presented by myself, and that myself be directed to continue to monitor the reports and media releases as they come available from the federal and provincial governments to keep council up to date on the progress moving forward to October 17th implementation date.
Okay, mover and seconder for that. Deputy Stockman and Councilor Hendricks. Any discussion at all? All those in favor? Opposed? And it's carried.
It's crazy.
It's gonna be a total disaster.
My next report is regarding the employee code of conduct from the last council meeting, which was June 18th. Council submitted some questions or expressed some concerns. So regarding those concerns that were expressed at the last council meeting, hopefully what I summarized in my report answers those questions and concerns. I have removed the second person throughout the whole document, as it was noted at the last council meeting. There are still some areas for improvement. The complaint form is outlined as is. The information needed in the form is a combination of public and private information. Just as any other complaint is handled that currently comes into the office, we cannot give out the names of who made the complaint or the names of who the complaint is about, but we can identify the situation in general terms. If it was a complaint that involved OPP, then all the information will be public knowledge unless there is a publication banned. Employee conduct has not been an issue in the past and is not expected to occur or be a problem. This policy is a starting point to establish a practical approach should a complaint be filed. With the employee code of conduct policies in other municipalities, usually the CAO deals with the complaint along with department heads. Every complaint that the office receives would be dealt with as a serious nature, and if there was a situation that resulted in an extreme action such as dismissal, council would be contacted by the CAO immediately, which is no different than what our current practice is. As explained at the last council meeting, in order for the CAO to know how to deal with each complaint, a policy as part of human resources would be created to outline the steps to take to reprimand employees. I can produce a report to council at whichever interval council decides. It should be noted that the purpose of the employee code of conduct is to make employees accountable and transparent, just as council is. Having a clear and concise policy makes it easy for direction in the event that we receive a complaint of employee misconduct. To date, we have not. However, this is a policy that municipalities are to have, just as we have a council code of conduct. And one note, council should be made aware that the changes to the Municipal Act, Bill 68, anyone from anywhere can file a complaint about staff or council. It's not a matter of just coming to the office and filling out a form to hand it to staff. They can go to the Township's Integrity Commissioner or Ombudsman or Meeting Investigator and file their complaint against staff or council at any time that they choose. If the township is proactive in having these policies in place, not only does it help internally with process, but it will show the public in the Ministry of Municipal Affairs that council is making steps to being proactive rather than reactive, as staff is responsible for delivering a wide range of important public services that's approved by council. A copy of the policy was circulated to staff, and to date there's been no comments received. There are financial implications in regards to investigations pertaining to staff time if a complaint was to be filed. Therefore, it would be minor in nature. And my recommendation to council is resolved that council accepts the employee code of conduct update from June 18th, 2008 council meeting report as presented by myself. And I have a second resolution that council approves the employee code of conduct policy as amended.
Okay, any questions or comments or mover for that?
So moved.
Okay, so moved by Councilor McKinnon, second by Councilor Sanders. All those in favor? Opposed and carried, and then the second motion there, which is resolved that council approve the employee code of conduct policy as amended. Councilor Hendricks and Deputy Mayor Stockman, all those in favor? Opposed, and that's carried. Okay, that's everything from you?
That is everything from me, thank you.
Perfect. Okay, so our next staff report is from our CAO Treasurer, Kathy.
Thank you, Mayor Smith. The first report is in regards to the accounts invoice payment approval for the period June 14th to July 5th, 2018. The total of the checks being submitted for approval is $1,384,291.25.
Any questions on the accounts? Councilor McKinnon?
Not on the accounts that are here before us, but at St. Clair Conservation Authority, our levy was outstanding, and I just wondered if we paid it yet.
It was paid.
Great.
It was paid before our last council meeting.
Okay, so our meeting was June.
So they would have received, it probably crossed in the mail, but we did pay our
Okay,
account.
good. Thanks, Kathy.
Okay, any questions on the accounts? Councilor Sanders?
On page 6, what is it? Public service, health and safety. Working at heights training. Who are we training?
We sent Jeff Little, Jeff Denemy, Coulter Cahill, and Aaron Nordhoff to that training.
Okay.
It was open to everyone, and those were the ones that took it up to decide to go.
That's my only question.
And that's because we do sometimes have to be on ladders and
Right.
that kind of stuff.
Good.
Councilor Hendricks, any questions?
No, I don't have any.
And-
Actually, that was the only
Oh.
one close to it.
I'll move the motion.
And that was moved by Councilor McKinnon, seconded by Councilor Hendricks. Any other questions? Deputy Mayor Stockman, did you have any? Perfect. Okay, all those in favor? Opposed, and that's carried.
Item number 2 is a request for a reduction in the consent application fee. As you'll see in my report, there is a 1 year from the date of mailing of the notice of the decision to obtain a certificate of consent. The certificate of consent is the document that's signed when all of the conditions have been met. There is no allowance in the Planning Act for an extension, so if someone does not meet their conditions within 1 year, it is lapsed and they have to start again. We did have one consent application from 2017 that is lapsing on the 25th of July. And that is from John and Jean Milligan, and Ken Milligan has submitted a request to have a consideration to have the fee reduced for the second application. The recommendation, we had 23...
Back up for, excuse
Yes.
me, back up for a second. Can I turn it back? A request for a second application?
He was requesting a reduced fee for the second application because he has to reapply. So he's reapplying for the exact same severance that he that they
not
have
for another
allowed.
severance.
No, they've allowed it to lapse, and technically it's not till the 25th, but there is no way they would get the conditions approved within the time frame. So it will lapse on the 25th of July. That's when the notice was mailed. We did do 23 applications last year, and we still have 6 consents that were approved which have not received their certificate, but most of them are because of the timing. They were done in October, November, so most of them are working on their consents, and we'll have 2 that will lapse this year. This one and one from Delmar Dodge that won't get completed. He sold the property and the new owners didn't complete the severance application. So the recommendation is that there be no allowance for reduction in the application fees for consents that have lapsed. Only because we still have to go through the process. We've tracked them all along. There's at least 5 times in the documents provided through the approval process where we remind them that the date of the date. We also take the extra effort partway through to remind them that they're going to lapse within 6 months. It's usually about a 6-month time frame. And we still have to pay the increased levy to the county for our planner. As well, we still have to review all of the application that comes through. So we still have not confirmed any of it was not substantially completed, so it's starting from scratch.
So my question was, did we notify them ahead of time? If we did,
Yes.
no reduction.
Yes, I did speak to him personally in regards to the
Wow.
severance.
Councillor McKinnon?
The only consideration that I'd put forth is that he be responsible for the actual cost of the second application. And it may come in at $1,600 or it may be less, but the actual cost for the second application.
Notified, if they're notified 3-4 months ahead of time, 6 months, it's up to them to get it done. I mean, it's not our responsibility, so.
And he stated in his letter that he was notified by the office.
Then that'll be it.
I just had one question if I could. Are they not able to ask for an extension on that, or am I thinking of another process?
No, there is no extension available for a consent unless there is a significant change in one of the conditions. And at that point in time, the point in time that we're at, there wouldn't be a condition that would make sense to change at that point in time. If it was something to do with being able to hook to a water line, which the water line wasn't installed, you may be able to get an extension, but at this point in time, there was no requirement for that.
Okay, so we have the recommendation there, and it's that resolved that council provide no reduction in application fee for consents that have lapsed. Deputy Mayor Stockman and Councillor Hendricks. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried.
We do work with the property owners through the last few conditions to make sure that they do meet their deadlines, so it is a lot of work here at the office getting them done sometimes.
I think sometimes people bite off more than they can chew.
A year seems like a long time, but it isn't that long when
No,
you
it's
have
not
to
very
wait
long.
for surveyors and you know, you're not able to do it all yourself. So.
Digging up the septic system and having it inspected.
They know that when they're going in,
They do,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, no.
so.
And if you start doing that, and the one okay, and then 12, then there's no end, so.
The next report is in regards to the bereavement leave policy. The policy was before council at the last meeting in closed session, and it has been reviewed. It was provided to staff for review. The last leave policy was dated June the 1st, 2015, and there's been some change in provincial legislation as well as just some general industry updates. So the policy is being suggested to be strictly used to deal with bereavement leave, and the policy is before you tonight, and we're requesting that it be approved as presented.
Okay, any questions or comments, or Councillor Hendricks, you're
I was
moving?
gonna
Okay, seconder. Deputy Stockman. Any further discussion? Yep, Councillor McKinnon.
Yeah, my concerns were addressed by Kathy, but I thought this would be an appropriate time to ask our service provider to be invited to a council meeting to make a presentation giving the financial impact and alternatives to staff and council. And I thought that the provider should meet with council to ensure that all understand the tax implications of short-term and long-term benefits, and when short and long-term benefits would kick in. And I also thought that on section 7 of the, it's not clear to me how much time the employee would have off. So in that case, would the employee move to the Employment Standards Act and have 2 paid days of leave and 8 unpaid days? Or like it just says that there'll be an unpaid leave. So to me, it's not clear.
Okay, so it would mean unpaid bereavement leave in the same amounts as a regular, as an employee who's been more than 3 months. So anybody, so what essentially that does is anyone who has not completed their probation period, which is 3 to 6 months, so the 3 months for sure, you would get the same time off as a full-time comparator, but you wouldn't get paid for it. We wouldn't also, they also are not qualified for any other benefits at that time. So
No.
they wouldn't be receiving any benefits.
No.
So they would be entitled under
Employment Standards Act.
under their Employment Standards Act for, they would get 2 days of unpaid personal leave and 8 without per year.
So I wondered if we should refer something like in that area to say those meeting this would be referred to the Employment Standards Act section 56(2).
But then it would qualify under a separate leave, which will be addressed under another leave policy, so that the 2 are separate. This is for pertaining to bereavement leave, which is directly related to the death.
Yeah.
Whereas a personal leave can still go back to someone in that situation. We can't deny them that, but we also have to ensure that that's available to all other staff as well. So we don't want to bring the provincial standards into a policy that's meant to be in addition to what is available as a provincial remedy. So provincially, employees aren't entitled to a bereavement leave, essentially. You're entitled to a personal emergency leave. So that is something that you can take, and an employer can't stop them. They only have to pay them for 2 days, and then if they take more than that, they're welcome to take those days off, but this is just a benefit directly related to the Township of Adelaide Metcalfe.
And I guess my other concern I had was taking away the 1 day for pallbearers, flower bearers, whatever. And I just felt it should remain in the policy as a day.
If I may, we did discuss that to some degree, and I believe that there were several reasons that it was taken out. One, that it's only specifically for a pallbearer, so if you're invited to be another part of the service, we have no allowance for that. So how do you discriminate that someone's going to be delivering the eulogy and they don't get a day off, but the pallbearer does? So to start to put in all of the different terms, it gets onerous on what someone would consider an important part of a funeral. As well, being a pallbearer could be considered discriminatory, as it's generally a male-oriented position. It's not a lot of female pallbearers. So unless you specify every sort of part of a funeral you could participate in, you could be called for discriminating against one employee against another. most immediate family is already included in the policy, so if
Yes.
you were going to be
That's true.
there being a
Yeah,
pallbearer,
that's true.
generally you are already part of the family.
Yeah.
And then if the person was a close enough friend, a vacation day can always be accommodated. So if it was an immediate thing,
Yeah.
it gets into when it becomes discretionary. There's no requirement for someone to prove that they have a death in the family or funeral. We're just, when you get into the pallbearer, there's no way to say yes, they were a pallbearer when they just wanted the day to go to the funeral instead of having to take a vacation day. So it just eliminates that gray area where.
So he could use one of his holidays for that day,
Just
Right.
vacation day.
or vacation
Correct.
day, right? Oh, that's okay. Yeah.
Okay, any other questions or comments? That was already moved by Councillor Hendricks and Deputy Stockman. Perfect. Okay, all those in favor? Opposed, and that's carried.
Item number 4 was the tender for the Robotham Drain 2017, specifically the Cuddy Drive crossing. I've left the tender results on your desk, and on the back of it is a brief explanation that I requested Street Associates provide to us, which explains why we're now going back and re-tendering something that we'd already tendered for. It was included in the original Robotham Drain 2017 tender as a specific cost to the road department for boring. As you'll see, the Suncor has decided that they wanted a live vac as opposed to shutting the power down. So we had to do some discussions between the contractor Robinson, Spreets, Jim Reeve, Drain Superintendent, and Jeff Little, Public Works Manager, discussed it, and they decided that the best thing to do would be to stop Robinson's 30 meters north of Cuddy Drive. They have completed the contract that they were required to complete, and they will not bill us for that part of the bore. They've walked away from that part. And then we re-tendered for the bore work remaining, and the low bidder was Hornblower's Horizontal Earth Boring Limited at a cost of $12,700 plus HST. And Van Gort Farm Drainage submitted $14,950 plus HST. So what will happen is we will try to recoup those costs directly from Suncor. We do have the amount which was originally tendered. We're going to try to go after Suncor for the complete cost of that, because we had already tendered it once and
Yes.
it was to be charged to the roads. And so since they are requiring a different proposal than what they originally approved before, we are going to bill that to Suncor and see where we go. If not, the roads will still pick up the portion that was assessed to the roads, with Suncor getting the additional added costs for the extra work.
Yeah, Suncor should certainly be liable for some of this,
Yes.
absolutely.
Yes, we're going to try to get to bill them for the entire.
For the entire,
And if
that's a
not,
good
we
idea,
will
yeah.
settle for them to pay the upcharge that
Yep.
we had to exceed.
Very good.
Okay, any other?
Just,
Mayor, yeah,
just to
Councillor
be,
Hendricks' question still then.
just to be clear, this is under the bridge on Cuddy? Or is this,
This is called west of Robotham on Cuddy.
yeah,
Where-
that's the bridge,
Bridge there.
under the bridge, right on Cuddy. That's where that drain crosses.
Crosses, just you'll see the pipe is actually still sitting in the field there.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the material is still all on site.
Mhm.
No, if Suncor requests something like this, and we have to go and redo everything else, somebody's gonna have to pay for this.
Suncor pays for it.
Absolutely, at least part of it, or most of it, or all of it. Yeah,
It was just really good for Spring to have that amount of drainage in that area anyway, even without the road crossing. The rest of the area really benefited from it. But yeah, there was a lot of fight just sitting there. And given the activities that have been going on in the neighborhood, I would get that done sooner rather than later. There's been a little bit of mischief going on in the neighborhood. So.
Yeah, we don't have to, because it's still part of the report.
Councillor McKinnon?
Sorry.
What,
When-
I was listening to Kathy still, that's why I wasn't.
When we accepted the tender on this before, Suncor were aware who the lowest tender were they not?
Yes, and what they had requested, what in the report itself, they were going to shut down. They were required. They said yes, they would shut down from here to here so that the crossing would be not locked. And then when they got looking at it, they were on site. They felt they couldn't shut down, so they needed someone who had the proper VACX that would be grounded, so they could go ahead and do it without having to shut the system down at the time.
So it was basically Suncor's request that we had to do this boring.
Exactly.
Suncor pays it all.
Yes, I'm with Deputy Mayor Stokman, that
Suncor pays
Suncor has to pay it all.
So do we have to go back to Suncor and say you're responsible for it before we do the bore?
I'd almost want to know if they were gonna balk us on it or not.
Well, I mean, we have to complete the drain.
Yes.
Yeah. I hear sooner than
Work
later.
has to be done.
Well, I'm
so yeah.
more worried about the materials laying on the side of the road than the work.
And we have approved a bore to go through. We have already committed the drain work through a bore underneath Cuddy. This what's popped up here is the extra cost to have the grounded machine. I mean, we've agreed, you know, and when the original tender came through, we agreed at a certain amount, and I don't.
Do we know what the original tender was?
Yes, we have that information.
Are we allowed to know that now?
I didn't bring it with me tonight,
Okay.
but we do
Yeah,
have
that-
that information.
okay.
I think it was 7,000.
Yeah,
Was
that's
it not
that sticks in my
7,000?
mind.
Okay.
I'm thinking when I looked
Well,
at it,
they
it was
certainly have to pick
7,000.
up the difference. That is an
So the
absolute.
minimum they will have to pick up is the difference, and they were being assessed directly for part of the cost of the drain as well. So they did have the special assessment on there, on the drain itself.
Well, then I think if it, oh, sorry.
No, you go ahead.
No, if that's the case, if we know what it was previously,
Yes.
then the difference, okay, I can live with this. I mean, we gotta get the drain done. If not, well, I would go for it all, but if we can't, at least that.
But
So the engineers should make an amendment to the schedule of assessment and throw in the cost, should they not?
It was already approved based on a shutdown bore, so the costs have already been assessed, so that we know how to proportionally assess those costs. They're all under special assessment because of it being bored, so we know exactly what the costs are going to be.
Okay.
Great, as long as we get the money. I don't care how we do it, but
Yeah.
at least most of it.
so the recommendation there, somebody wants to move and second it?
Oh, that we go with horn blower, you mean?
Yep.
Yeah, I'll move that and go with, yeah.
Councillor Sanders and seconded by Deputy Mayor Stockman. All those in favor? Opposed and carried. And everything's all straightened out for billing that extra amount or the full
Yes.
amount.
Yes,
No,
and
we
we also
think
have
about
not released Suncor's security deposit as well, so we can always
That's
withdraw
much better.
from that. Yes.
Okay, that's good.
That's good.
Good, good. As long as you're in control.
They could easily shut that down because the things are standing still a fair bit of the time anyway.
What if I could?
That'll make a damn bit of difference.
Well, last week they were working.
Last week they were standing still. There was one day, there was 5 megawatts of wind power for the whole hour across the province.
Moving on to other business. Do you have anything further
It's a
business?
sore spot, eh?
Anything further business at all? No?
Good.
Okay. So we'll move into, we just have one bylaw, and it's resolved that all three readings be given to bylaw number 35, 2018, confirming council proceedings, and that the bylaw be signed by the mayor and clerk, and the corpus seal be attached.
So moved.
Councilor Finnan, and seconded by Councilor Hendricks. All those in favor? Opposed and carried. And if there's nothing else, a motion to adjourn at 8:45 p.m.
I'll move.
Councilor Sanders and Deputy Mayor Stockman. All those in favor? Opposed, and that's it.
I can't.